Aloha and good morning. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz. We're joining you from our breaking news show in Honolulu. And with me, we have two guests today. And one is our co-host, of course. He's not really a guest. He's he's our co-host. Is Dr. Peter Charlo. He's in College Station, Texas. And we have Alain St. Ange, who is in the Seychelles. So we'll
And
talk
he is a real guest.
He's a real guest. And we always start with the weather. So I'm really curious about the weather in Seychelles. But here in Hawaii, it seems to be a just beautiful day today. Nice beach weather. It's warm, but not too warm. It's about 26, 27 degrees, sunny. And it's going to be just a beautiful day. It's blue sky. And let's start with our guest. How's the weather in the Seychelles?
Well, Seychelles is blessed by the weather patterns that we have. We always say it is beautiful one day and perfect the next. Now we are in the start of a new monsoon, which is the southeast monsoon, so we'll have some wind. It is ideal for people with wanting sailing, but it is also much cooler. So we enjoy the weather. We've had good weather, but Seychelles being virtually on the equator, we have drizzles, but we don't get long rainfall. So it is something that is accommodating, it's refreshing, and it is an easy way. If you are a local in the gardening spill, it is really nice. Or if you are a tourist, it does help you cool yourself as you sit on the beach.
Wonderful. And of course, College Station, Texas, they don't have a beach, as Peter said many times, but how are things in College Station, Texas today?
But we have no one sitting on the beach because we don't have a beach in the middle of Texas. Our very hot spell has broken a little bit. It was in the hundreds, which is in the 40 degrees Celsius. It's now down to 90s, which means it's only about 35 degrees Celsius. And so in Texas, that's cold weather. We're ready to put on a coat. So this is summer in Texas. And one of the nice things about being here is that you have not only hot weather, but lots of humidity. And that means that your skin is beautiful, because very few people believe I'm 95 years old, but look how great I look.
Don't be fooled here.
That's because this is like living in a boiling bottle of oil of Olay. Your skin is always being moisturized.
Yeah.
So
And
lots
a
is
lot,
going on. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
I was saying lots is going on today. And one of the things I think it'd be interesting to see if it's also touching the Seychelles is in the western part of the world, both the United States and Canada and Europe, there are major airline problems going on. And that means baggage is being lost, flights are being canceled, crews are not showing up. And this is a real problem because the cost of airline tickets has gone up tremendously, but the service is going down. And people are having delays of 3, 4, 5 hours, often on runways. And that certainly is true across all the major cities in the United States, much of Latin America, and certainly in Europe, where you see pictures in Amsterdam and London of just people searching for their bags in the middle of these huge rooms. I don't know if the Seychelles are having such a problem, but certainly in Europe and the United States we are.
Peter, I think we hear it, we see it on TV. We don't have these sort of problems. We have an organized system that works quite well. But I think it is more important today than ever before for the travel industry, the tourism industry, and then the ministry, that is the one that should be liaising with everybody, Ministry of Transport. We must be able to find people sitting together, analyzing the shortfalls or deficiencies, and then working with it. The idea today, as we are relaunching tourism, and it is relaunching, it is quite clear, we need to find everybody pulling on the same side. It is impossible, it is impossible to find what is happening with the luggage. I mean, it is something that spoils holidays. It is not fair. It is unacceptable, actually.
Yes.
But how do they solve it? There is the workers, there are the planes, there are the airports, there are the handlers and everybody else. And then the one who suffers is the airline, because it's an economic shortfall for them. And it is the tourists who have their holiday spoiled.
Okay.
We need to be launching an area for dialogue to relook at where we are going.
And of course, Alan, you know that in Europe and the United States, when people are traveling by air, they're not only tourists, they're also business people. And in a place such as North America, where the distances are so vast, or the Atlantic community, if you lose some of your luggage and you're working on a business trip for 2 days, you have a major problem. And so that's really a big issue. One of the things we are discovering, and I think Jürgen has brought this up in Germany, is that workers are not coming to work.
Well, and I can tell you, we did a report yesterday about my former hometown, Düsseldorf airport. They literally had fights. And most of the check-in staff that was left in the departure hall now hired to tell people that the flight is not operating. They just left. I said, we're not going to take this abuse. So it was just the police and thousands of passengers that got stranded. So it's really chaos. And the chaos is the same issue here in the United States, specifically here in Hawaii. And I don't know how it is in the Seychelles. There's not enough staff. There are not enough people out there. It could all be organized if we had everyone working. We had working in 2019, but we don't. And this triggers down not only on aviation, it triggers down in the hotels where your rooms are only cleaned every third day. It triggers down into restaurants where you have empty tables and people are lined up outside and cannot get seated. And this is a real issue. It's just curious to hear, how is this in Seychelles? And I know Seychelles is kind of the size of Oahu, the main island in the Seychelles. I've been there, beautiful place, and I always said.
Why don't we try to? Most people don't know Oahu or the Seychelles.
So I'm explaining it. I'm explaining it now. Oahu, of course, is in Hawaii, and I think everyone knows where Hawaii is, specifically if you're in the United States and Europe. And Seychelles is an independent country, so you have different type of regulations in the Indian Ocean. It's part of the Vanilla Island group. And it has a lot of international airlines, major airlines flying into Seychelles. That includes like all the Gulf carriers like Emirates, Etihad, Turkish Airlines, and many others. You have direct flights from Europe. So it's a different type of clientele, and there are no really domestic flights. There are some in Seychelles. Here in the United States, we're dealing mostly with domestic travel to the mainland US. What is still 5.5-hour flight to go to the closest city here in San Francisco from where I'm at. And these are fast distances. But how is the situation in Seychelles? Do you have enough staff to run your airports?
You see, Seychelles it's in a different league to itself. I think every Seychellois is conscious that its tourism industry must work. And you find people, the airport authority, the DMCs, the destination management companies, all pulled together. We try to deliver what we say we are as a country. And this has been the beauty of Seychelles. COVID has come, but people have kept their staff. Mostly, very few areas have seen a lot of redundancies. So people have been able to be managed into keeping their jobs. Today, Seychelles has reopened since earlier this year, and it is working. It is working. And we find that we are on the right track to ensure that we are going to tackle August is coming, August is peak period, and you'll find that Seychelles is ready to receive its guests in peak period.
But I think you guys are you're both very lucky. Your island places, relatively small. The population of both Hawaii and part of the Seychelles is the population of 3 or 4 large apartment buildings in New York City. So I think when you get to, the mainland of Europe or the mainland of the United States, you see very different realities. First of all, it takes workers a long time to get to the airports. Secondly, there's a major problem, and that is that the governments, especially the US government, said that if you didn't get vaccinated, you couldn't work. And so we don't have enough air controllers. Because there's not enough air controllers, flights are being backed up. And many of those people were dismissed. And that's a major problem. The US government has now said, for example, in our National Guard, that it's ready to fire 40,000 National Guard people. That will be 20% of the entire National Guard, and they don't know how they will replace them. So the other side of it is that in most of the United States and Europe, you receive a certain amount of money if you're not working. And governments are just giving money. So there's not an incentive to go back to work. And so what you're seeing is a double side of it. You're seeing big places with huge airports where people either stopped working because of COVID or said, you know what, I can make as much money not working as I am working. And now you have a major staff problem, which is taking place in especially large cities in the United States, Latin America, Canada, and Europe. And that's going to create, a lot of chaos. Hawaii and the Seychelles are wonderful, and you guys are lucky that you're in very small areas. But when you get to big places, the problems multiply. It's not just, they're huge.
But Peter, it's in relation. It's not about the quantity of people. We have
No, it's not in relationship.
We have a state with 1.6, 1.7 million people. Seychelles is a lot smaller. You only have about 100,000 citizens, but in proportion, the problem is the same. And if you have New York City, you have many million people, but in proportion, it's the same issue.
No, I would disagree. The population of Hawaii is smaller than the population of the island of Manhattan. Okay. And so the bottom line is because of government telling people that they didn't have to work, etc. What's happened is, and especially New York State's generous, and I think they did it out of goodness, it's not a proportional situation. First of all, it was never proportionate because you have different types of traffic issues, different types of geographical issues, and it doesn't work statistically. That's not correct. It just doesn't work statistically. It's not a proportional analysis. And because you can only build buildings so big. If you did a proportional analysis, you'd have to have airports in New York the size of Honolulu, and you couldn't do that. It would become an impossibility.
No,
I really believe that there's an economy of scale.
Right.
There's an economy of scale. I studied in Germany, and I looked at the tourism angle of hotels, which were big hotels compared to what we have. They have the economy of scale, but we have to go back to basics.
Yes.
Find troubleshooters. There are troubleshooters who can come in and say, where do we go wrong and what is going on?
Right.
This happens everywhere. Every industry, you have somebody who can troubleshoot, identify the problem, put the finger on it, and then decide how to rectify the shortfall. And I think today, the more we sit contented, yes, luggages are being delayed somewhere. We have a field of left suitcases. It's not good enough.
No.
We are hurting the industry that we are working hard to make it take off again. We must zoom in, find the problem, see where the problem is, and then put the finger. Once the finger is on it, then you find a person or a group of people who can come in and analyze how to rectify it.
Absolutely, you're 100% correct. Because, and as you know, when it comes to economy of scales, the bigger the place, the more complicated the politics often, and therefore the more difficult it is. Again, it's not statistically, the economy of scale kicks in. Therefore, large places especially need people to come in who are outsiders and are not politically connected, who are not, who are able to view the whole forest and not just particular trees. So I think your point's really well taken. The tourism industry cannot blow the summer. This is a summer when people are starting to travel again. And if travel becomes a nightmare, then we may discover that next year it's going to be very low. Especially, we have to take into consideration, most of the world is dealing with high gas prices, high fuel prices. There's certainly in the United States by next year we'll be in a deep recession. That recession will probably touch Europe also, which means that costs will have gone up and people's incomes will have gone down. And therefore, we better offer a good service and value for the dollar or value for your money, because if not, people will say, staycation, I'll stay home. And that's the last thing the tourism industry wants.
You've put totally the finger on the issue. Value for money.
Right.
The one who takes his family on a holiday knows that they've paid, they're getting to such a place tomorrow. They need to be there with their luggage. They cannot be left behind. This is unacceptable in today's, in this world we're living in. So we must be able to deliver to the clients. And this is why, when I said before about troubleshooting, we need to find the reason why there is a problem. And no airline can sit idle and say, we have a problem, the luggage has been left, 1,000 pieces are there somewhere. This is not good enough. You are destroying the holiday of somebody who saved, even in difficult times, to save his money to go on holiday with his family or with his fiance or wife. You cannot kill that holiday.
No.
It is that dream that they've built, and that expectation is there. We need to deliver.
If we turn a dream into a nightmare, people will not come back.
Completely.
And
Right.
and the other side of it is, remember, in North America and Europe, airlines are not just for vacations, they're essential forms of transportation, because people cannot do business, and Zoom has helped a lot. But on the whole, people are, if we want to have meetings, if we want to have conventions, if we want to have trade shows, and you get to a trade show without your luggage, you got a problem.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely, Peter. And it triggers down. I mean, like Alain said, Seychelles is organized. It's a relatively small airport and bags are delivered right away. Everything works perfect. But what about if the bags are not on the plane? That's not a fault the Seychelles has contributed to. It's the fault of the airport where a passenger took off from. And if the passenger took off after a 6-hour wait and tired and gets to the destination all excited to go to the beach, and there's no bag, you only have your winter clothes, you know, depending where you come from and what time of the year, that is a real problem. And
Yeah, so I noticed now a number of governments have put out memos asking people when they travel to only take carry-on luggage. And that's going to cause another problem, because you can only put so much carry-on luggage on a plane. But people are becoming afraid to check luggage. The other side of it is that if you're going, say, from the United States to Europe or wherever, and you're taking children, and all of a sudden you're sitting on the runway for 4 hours before a 10-hour flight, you have a true nightmare. Trying to keep children under control for 14 hours is not an easy event, especially when you're not even flying, you're just sitting on the runway and information is not being given. And so what we're doing is we've got to come up with ways, and that means, and Alan is 100% right in this, we should be thinking through what are the problems and what are solutions. For example, if you're stuck on the airline on the runway for 4 hours, maybe they have to come up with a film, they have to come up with some games, they have to come up with serve an extra dinner, you know, come up with some way to entertain.
Just have to get their plane off the runway,
right,
and fly.
right.
I think that is the whole thing. They don't need to look for excuses.
Yes.
They need to say, how do I get my passengers on board?
Yes.
How do I get the luggage on the plane? And then we take off.
Yes.
I think we must, all giving you another film is only a distraction from the reality.
Of course it is. But the problem is, if you're in a
Solve
place
the
like,
issue.
if you're at Heathrow or Kennedy or O'Hare in Chicago, you can have 50 planes now backed up. You can't get on the runway. It's just not there. And so now you have in other words, if it's only one plane on a runway, it's great. But we're seeing now backups of 50 planes on runways. Now what do? We can't build another runway in an hour.
I'm for playing bingo, you know, that's always exciting. So you can do
But
that.
these are, I mean, what I'm saying is we've got to come up with some sort of situation. And then the other side of this is something I've always argued, at least from the American perspective. When we fly to Europe, we arrive early in the morning. The hotel immediately looks at us and says, your room won't be ready till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You're now coming and you are basically a refugee with money. Then your plane leaves at 10 o'clock at night, but the hotel kicks you out at 12 o'clock in the evening, at 12 o'clock noon. Well, now again, you're a refugee with money. Now, again, if you're only a single person, that's not a big deal. But if you're a family and you're traveling with children or traveling with someone who needs some extra help, how do you deal with the issue of
Peter, Seychelles, the tourism industry or the hotel industry of Seychelles and a lot of Africa has developed these day room scenarios
Yes,
where they have a batch of rooms that are dedicated exactly for that.
yes.
Yes, you have to give the room to the new arrivals. There's a checkout time, but you can then move into a day room that gives you the facilities. You won't have a sitting room inside your room, but you'll have a room where you can shower, you can lie on a bed, you can get dressed, you can leave your luggage. And I think the tourism industry or the hospitality industry for areas that deal with the business community, we need to develop what the guest wants.
Yes.
It is unacceptable for you to turf somebody out and put him sitting in the lounge with his suitcase under his feet, and he is there, he's falling asleep. It gives a bad image to the hotel anyway. So hotels must learn to say, how do I accommodate these clients? If that is the norm, where the planes will arrive early and the ones will leave at night, how do we accommodate it? I think it can be done.
Yeah, of course.
But we need the effort of everybody on board. And this is where the dialogue needs to be open between the government as a facilitator, the private sector together, and the tourist representatives to say, how do we accommodate the requirements or the needs that is today developed in this 2022 era? We need to find that. And the earlier we do it, the better it is.
Yes. And that means we have to sit down and we have to think through what are the problems, what are the real problems, what are possible solutions, and how does one part of the industry cooperate with the other part? Because very often they work independently. I doubt and that hotels and airlines coordinate checkout times with plane leavings.
And then, of course, there are new schemes, depending, of course, in high season when you're back to back, that may not always work, but there are schemes where you get charged for 24-hour periods. And many times hotels actually sell a night twice or a day twice, especially airport hotels with day rooms. They sell to the passenger who leaves at 5 in the morning, and they sell it again for someone moving in at 8, moving out in the afternoon, and having the next guy coming in the afternoon. So they're selling like 3 nights in one day. So there are different revenue sources for hotels. Hotels also many times charge for late checkout, for an early check-in. And these are all legitimate ways of providing these extra services. But of course, the passenger also has to agree. So it should be logical. If someone uses a hotel room, you got to pay for it. So if you're too, let's put this in quote, too cheap to pay an extra $50 or $100, and so you just simply cannot check in early. So it's always a give and take, I think.
Well, there is that. The other side of it is we have to be very careful as we face some real economic problems of nickel and diming people and pricing ourselves out of the market. And so there's got to be, two sides to that, because again, the single person can say, okay, it's another $50. The family is thinking, wow, this is my one trip. And it now hit the point where it's buying books or clothing or something for the school year and going to vacation. We can't do both. Vacation obviously is let down, is ignored. So we're going to have to come up with ways, especially when we're facing some real economic problems. The stock market is down, the inflation is up, and these are going to be real issues that if we don't look at them, not from our perspective, but from the perspective of the client, of the tourist, we're going to have some real problem, because you know what? Tourism is an expendable industry. And we learned that during COVID. People can just easily say, I'm not traveling. It's too expensive. We a few years ago, during the last crisis in 2008, the concept came of the staycation. And all of a sudden, if no one comes to Hawaii, you don't have to worry about hotels. Hawaii doesn't want tourists anyway. I know you guys are pushing for people not to come, but if no one comes to a place, you know what? You don't have to worry about day rooms or hotel backups, because you'll have no one there.
Well, Peter, never kill the goose that lays the golden egg.
Right.
Yeah.
And that
We need to save that bird to ensure that it keeps laying this golden egg. So how do we make sure that tourism is not affecting the client and a potential client? Because one affected person will tell at least 9 people, don't go there or
Right.
don't fly this airline. Whereas if Jorgen or yourself, Peter, have enjoyed the flight so much,
Yes.
and you tell one person that was a good flight. So we need to find a way to ensure that things are moving and that things are working. And I think this is what we need to aim for. And I think the whole industry must become realistic and don't take tourism for granted.
Yes, I think you're 100% correct. And it sounds to me like the Seychelles is the place to go. I've never been there. Maybe one day I'll have the opportunity of going to the Seychelles, but it sounds to me like you guys really have your act together. Of course, you're a small country, but I wish that maybe you could become a symbol for bigger countries around the world, because the real issue is not being a small country. I think what you're really telling the world is you care. And when people care and people are worried about other people, then that really makes tourism true hospitality. And that's very important.
See, the guiding light of Seychelles, we do what we have to do, but we have to protect our tourism industry. It is the pillar of the economy,
Right.
and it employs so many of our
Right.
fellow citizens, fellow Seychellois. So we need to ensure that it works. So we can do what we want, say what we want, but keep tourism going, facilitate it, make it work, make it clockwork in the way it operates. And I think this is the basic guidelines that we work with.
And so many parts of the world have the exact opposite idea. And that's one of the reasons why tourism is not always as productive as it could be, and people don't appreciate the industry as much as they could. So I really congratulate the people of the Seychelles. You guys do a great job.
Yeah, and if I
You
can
know,
add to it, I remember the time when Alain actually was the Minister of Tourism in Seychelles for several years. And when he was the minister, and he invented probably the biggest thing ever in the Seychelles, the carnivals of, I think you call it the carnivals of the carnivals. And it was a huge event for a relatively small country. I arrived and I met the foreign minister. And when I talked to the foreign minister, he told me, look, I'm really not important. The most important ministry we have in the Seychelles is the Ministry of Tourism. And that's really the attitude a lot of places don't have anymore, because tourism is not really seen as the biggest and the greatest. And Seychelles is a rare positive exception, I think. But gentlemen, we're beyond our time slot here, and I know it's getting quite late for Alain. It's evening time, morning time here, and it's a little bit afternoon in Seychelles, in Texas. So, but I wanted to thank all of you for being part of our breaking news show today.
And thank you, Thomas, for being part of the show also.
Yes, thank you. And if you wanted to watch us again, and you have missed the beginning of it, just stay tuned. We're going to repeat it every hour or two on eTurbo News and all our websites on live stream, and it'll be archived and also on our site breakingnewsshow.com. And of course, we're always on YouTube for all times to come, on Vimeo. And thank you very much for being part of us. And if you wanted to be a guest on our Breaking News show, just go to breakingnewsshow.com, excuse me, and you find a way to contact us, and we'd be happy to consider. I can only say aloha from Hawaii. I don't know how you say it in Seychelles, and Peter will say us howdy, I think, in a minute. How do you say?
Howdy from Texas. By the way, Jürgen, I know you're working without having your coffee, so
no, I got my coffee here. So.
Okay, because I know you don't like to work without your coffee. Alan, bonne nuit. Have a good evening.
We keep it simple here, and we use the KISS principle. Just say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, guys.
Bye-bye.
You have a nice day, a nice evening. Aloha. Bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to close this segment with a short clip. It's a minute clip about an initiative by a former soldier from the Soviet Army who is now an artist, and he did a sculpture with 850 grams of blood and Putin's picture. Kind of interesting. And he also started a cryptocurrency with Putin's picture on it. So see this, and you can actually also read the article on ETN. Have a good day.